Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Douglas and Diggets, he's back. This abomination is back, and honestly, I wasn't welcoming his return, but nevertheless, he's here. So, without further ado, this is going to be a lot of stuff to get in here, so let's jump right into it. So, he is a black dragon. We all know this. Black dragons are some of the strongest in all of the Monster Hunter universe, but he in particular is pretty interesting. Now, before he only had two different modes, and these modes were depending on whether he was in the air or on the ground. This time around, he has a couple of different changes to that. For starters, when you first fight him in your special assignment, he will be known what's in ice mode. Now, ice mode means if left alone, that means if you don't break his horns, we'll get to that in a second. If you don't break his horns, I don't even know what the hell they actually call it initially, something judgment, but if you don't break his horns, he will do his big super attack and it will be ice based. So that pretty much lets me know what mode he's going to be in. Now, if you get him out of the special assignment and you do, actually let's not get into that. If you're fighting from the special assignment, which is what this is really going to help you out with, he's going to start in ice mode. And when you're not, he may start in fire mode. It really changes on the day. Once you beat him the first time, there'll be a small tutorial telling you thusly. Nevertheless, he's in ice mode. So the only elements you really need to bring, heck, the only elements that me and my team brought was ice, because we're going to take him out of ice mode, forcing him into fire mode. Now, he can do this in two ways. If you break his horns, he will be unable to go back into ice mode. So he won't ever do the ice super thing. He will only be able to do the fire super. And to help combat him while he's doing the fire, you need to bring ice. That's how this works. Bring ice for his fire, bring fire for when he's in ice. Every other element doesn't really matter too much. I mean, it does in case you want to do actual raw damage to him. But the main thing you really want to focus on is him doing his super. You do not want him to do a super and get away scot-free. Now, the way the super works is kind of interesting. I won't lie to you, I don't have all the information to it, but I'm going to give to you guys the best I was able to understand it myself. It works like this. If you're not doing sufficient elemental damage to him, when he goes to do the super, it will be very devastating. So what you're going to want to do is do your absolute best. Come in here with some incredible amounts of element. I wouldn't recommend using slower weapons like the lance and the gun lance. That's why I actually had to swallow my pride. Actually, no, this monster is so disrespectful, I had to be disrespectful. I had to use a weapon that I actually hate myself, so that way I can fight him, a monster that I equally hate. So we're using Charge Blade here. The Charge Blade is an Ice Charge Blade. It's the Kajar Ice Charge Blade. It has 790 element on it. You're going to want to have elemental numbers up to that high. You're going to need to do a lot of elemental damage to him, so that way when he does do the Nova, you'll be actually able to survive it. So now let's say you do enough damage to him. I'm not gonna lie to you, fighting him, you're gonna have to figure it out yourself. If you made it this far in the game, you're probably sufficient enough at fighting and dodging and things like that. It may take you a couple of times or two, but if I have enough time left in the video, I'll break down how we actually fight. So I'm just gonna get the juicy bits out the way. So once you do enough sufficient elemental damage, and let's say you break the horn. Now the horn, back in the day, the horn was the only thing you really need to make the good armor and stuff. And this time, the horn is the only thing you really need to break, so that way you can actually survive the engagement. You want to break the horn as fast as possible, but you can only break the horn when he's in dragon mode. Now, if you take a look at the screen right now, I'm told that he's in dragon mode when he has like this purple hue about him. Mind you, I couldn't tell right off the bat because I myself am colorblind, so whenever he changed forms and changed colors, I wasn't able to tell. Luckily though, if you have the handler and everything talking to you, they let you know whenever he's changing forms. So they'll say Alatreon is shifting elements or whatever. That's whenever he's in dragon form. Then only then can you break the horn. So right then, I recommend that you and your team do all you can to make sure he comes to the ground to break his horns. If you have someone who's using like insect glaive or whatever, make sure that you try and get all the mounts in when he's in this particular form. If you can, use your flint shot to smack him against one of the, I think, 2 or 3 walls you can smack him into in this area to break his horns, to do extra damage to him when he's on the ground. Once one of his horns is broken, like I said before, he'll be locked out of a particular form, the other form to the one he was actually already in. So in this case, he'll be locked out of ice, so now he'll be stuck in fire. So we can actually use our ice weapons to do a great amount of elemental damage, so that way when he does do his Novas, up to 3 I believe, you'll be okay. So now let's say you broke the horn and he's doing his Nova. He does his Nova, I believe, 6 minutes into the fight. The only way that makes it a little longer is if you had some knockdowns, is if you had a couple of knockouts, things that prolong what he's currently trying to do. But 6 minutes in, usually he'll try to go for his Nova. And in order to survive the Nova, if you've done sufficient of elemental damage, which I hope you've been doing, longsword, dual blade, sword and shield, insect glaive, use these things, and let's say you broke the horn, you technically can thug it out by bringing health boosters. I recommend health booster pluses, of course. Health boosters, eating Asteria jerky, and also vitality mantles. Now, when you do this, let's say you have your team with you, you're all gonna want to like huddle into one location. Use your health booster, take your jerkies when you see your health actually depleting at an alarming rate, or use your vitality mantle. Now, I've also been told that you can use a vitality mantle accompanied with the health booster, and that's all you really need. But for some of us who are kind of paranoid, you kind of want to take that Asteria jerky as well, because it replenishes your red health, which is what the Nova does. The Nova takes away a lot of your green health, leaving behind nothing but red health. It's very akin to Lunastra and her Nova. When we were first trying to fight her, trying to figure out how the heck to survive that thing. It's a lot like that, minus the wind pressure. It will do the Nova 3 times. After the third Nova, I don't think it'll do it anymore, because usually shortly after that, the monster itself dies. So for the most part, just understand that this particular thing is going to happen up to 3 times, well, usually around 3 times, and you'll be good to go. With a party of 4, your fights might last about 20 minutes. My average number was about 20. We did 20 on my first run, then 18 on my second, and roughly around that range of number there. But nevertheless, so with all this said, this is the basis of what you really need to know to fight and actually survive some of the more interesting bits. But I will teach you some tech, some little tricks, a couple of tips here that will actually use some things for you to actually to know. Now, for a couple of things that it likes to do, it will do what we lovingly refer to as like a mini Nova. Usually it'll do this in flight. I've seen it done in flight. I've seen it done outside of flight. But what it'll do is like it'll just flex on you. Just real quick. It'll be a real quick flex. And it'll just be a huge burst of dragon element. Now, in order to really combat this, you can't. You really can't. But what you can do is, if you face him directly, like face him dead on, like right in front of him, that attack for whatever reason won't hit you. I learned that it won't actually hit you if you do that. Like, I didn't learn through my own mission. However, one of my friends told me, yo, if you actually are standing right in front of it when it does it, it won't hit you. It's usually, I'm guessing, an attack that spreads horizontally as opposed to like a spherical type of form, if you will, meaning it won't hit in like all 360 degrees, probably just off onto the side, maybe in the back or whatever. So if you ever see him do this, just know that if you're a far enough distance away, you'll be okay. But if you're right dead on him, you'll kind of be okay too. For those who remember, think of Laggy from back in the older games when it would do this huge discharge where it would curl up. If you stand right up underneath his chest, it won't hit you at all. So that's, I guess that's one little tidbit to note. And let's say once you first start the match off, wear a Rocksteady Mantle instantly, because he's standing right behind, well, excuse me, right in front of one of the particular rocks you can use to slam his body into. Now, you can't just slam him into the wall with your flint shot. There are certain points in which you can. If you look at the edge of the map, there are these rocks that are technically still on the map that are higher than most others. Like, so those are the ones you're gonna really need to focus your focus your accuracy on to knock him over. Now, again, like I said, when you start the fight, he's actually standing in front of one. So wear your Rocksteady Mantle. I recommend the Rocksteady Mantle because it's gonna roar and do attacks and things. Because actually doing a flint shot on Alatreon is actually a lot harder than I originally thought. So wear the Rocksteady Mantle, turn him around, flint shot him, boom, smack him into the wall. Now, if you do this, once you lay the smackdown on him, he won't actually be enraged immediately. This is why I feel like having at least one decoration point, or one skill point, if you will, into Agitator will be great. If you aren't going to run full on Agitator, I like running Agitator, so I usually have a full set of Agitator on. But with just one point, it lets you know whenever he's enraged, because you can't flint shot the monster when they're enraged, if you're not already checking out all the other cues that they give you. Another separate bit of tech is that you can use flash pods on him. Granted, you can only use flash pods whenever he's not enraged. So a lot of times he'll be doing a lot of flying. Like, he's a lot faster than he used to be. He'll do a lot of flying, a lot of jumping, a lot of running, a lot of skipping and hopping. You can help against this, especially when he's flying, if he's not enraged. This is also a really good time for you to actually coordinate with your team. Say, hey, once he gets in the sky and we can't get like a mount, like if you don't have an insect glaive user or something like that, like a trustworthy, not trustworthy, but an ability to mount the monsters sufficiently and efficiently, you can use a flash pot. Whenever he's not enraged, bring him to the ground. Again, in dragon mode, be really great to do as well, and you'll be fine. Because he does hit the ground. He doesn't like flail on the ground, but you can get him out of the sky onto the ground again. Alright, so let's look at the armor real quick. So his armor is actually not that good. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's actually not that good. It looks cool. It's very reminiscent to that of how it used to be back in the day, which is something that I guess I like. I don't like him, but at least they use the old school armor. Now, Alpha is actually, I guess, the main joint, but if you look at the skills, you get attack boost 7, resentment 5, dragon attack 4, defense boost 3, health boost 3, dragon resistance 3, power prolonger 3, and crit eye 2. Now, its set ability is actually 2 of them. The 2 pieces, equipped with weapons elemental power increases as your armor's elemental resistances increase, and the other one is increases all elemental resistances by 20%. So the cool thing about this is that if you're like really big on numbers, actually not even cool, I think it's like a bad thing. If you're really good on the numbers and figuring things out, like really crunching meta numbers, essentially all this actually is, these 2 skills combined, is elemental attack 6. That's literally what it is. That's the boost you get from it. So you have to put on 3 to get the true benefit of 2. And with that, it's just elemental attack 6. Mind you, that's still good though. You can only run 3 pieces of the monster's armor and get the full benefit, and then mix your own set individually. But if you don't like that, look at it like this. At least you'll still be a relatively decent elemental juggernaut, because plus 20 to all your resistances on top of, if you use the the defense boost and like max that out, you have an elemental increase of an extra 5. So that's kind of cool too. So it's an elemental kind of set, you know. I give it up for that. Its elemental is very defensive, if you will, even though it does have attack boost and resentment. For what it's really worth, you're probably gonna be much more defensive than you are going to be offensive with this kind of set. It's a lackluster set, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, the effort you put into fighting him isn't really worth the armor itself, but I mean, at least it's kind of cool. The beta essentially works the same, you just lose a couple of points here and there. You lose dragon attack, which is negligible in a lot of cases. Power prolonger, depending on who you are, it'll be negligible as well. 1 point of crit eye, 1 point of resentment, 1 point to attack boost. Essentially, if you're not like someone who can really benefit from power prolonger, you're probably better off with going in beta, because you have the extra slots and whatnot. Now let's look at the weapons. The weapons have always been good. That's the one thing. The weapons have always been good, and they're still good. Now we're going to go look at my lance, because it's the very first thing I actually made from him. The Alatreon Gleam, or Alatreon Gleam. It's very good. So if you just look at the numbers here, the attack is 644. Now, for what I'm told, in terms of raw damage, that's 270 raw, I believe, which is a solid number. Granted, you really want to shoot for like 300. You know, that's the juice right here. That's that 690. That's that Bracky. Even better is Rajang. I don't have the other one, but you know, I think it's like 712 or something like that. But nevertheless, for Alatreon, it's not necessarily about the raw, it's always about the element and the actual sharpness. So if you look, that dragon element is at 660 on a lance. I have never seen numbers that high ever in my entire life. And that sharpness is godlike. So what you're gonna get if you make one of his weapons is incredibly high sharpness and incredibly high dragon element. So anything that's susceptible to dragon is going to take the fat dirt nap very quickly. Speaking of which, using his weapons with his armor set is looking like the wave. So if you're really going to be about that life, if you're a huge elementalist, you might want to run his armor set. Even though, you know, just run his armor set, get some elemental attack in there as well. Probably get some crit element if you can, and really give it to him, you know. So honestly, in a nutshell, the weapons, top tier stuff. They've always been top tier. I'm glad they're still top tier. The armor is not trash. It's just B+, if you will. B+. I mean, it's situational. The armor situation. It's not gonna be like a meta-defying armor, kind of how like Raging Bracky's armor was. Raging Bracky's armor is so meta-defying. It's literally what I wore to fight Alatreon with. I just wore Raging Bracky, like straight up and down Raging Bracky. Just two points into the beta, 2 into the alpha. And I just kind of ran in there like that and I called it a day. But nevertheless, the gear is great. I recommend you get the gear. It's going to take a bit of grinding to do, but he kind of gives the good stuff off kind of easily. The hardest thing to get from, honestly, is probably going to be the tails, which you can technically carve from the body, but you're better off just cutting the tail. But that's also cutting time away from breaking the horns. So, I mean, it's on you. Whether you just go in there and do both. If you're godlike, you could break the tail and cut the horns. Wait, if you can cut the tail and break the horns, you don't cut horns. Anyway, if you could do both, fantastic. If you don't do one, I guess just have sacrificial tail runs. It's, you know, we're hunters. This is what we do. But nevertheless, the armor's great. I recommend getting at least something out of it. I'm gonna get the weapons, maybe an armor set, and then never fight this monster ever again. Okay, so where does it leave us? I mean, the monster's back. The fight is pretty difficult. I'm not gonna say it's the hardest fight I had to really go up against. Day 1, I didn't get any dubs. We fought him about maybe 4 or so times, didn't get any dubs. But day 2, when I actually sat back and I thought about a lot of the things, trying to figure out what it was you had to do to do any real damage to him, let alone survive the super, it was kind of free after that. Honestly, I'm gonna have to fight him solo to really give it the full assessment in my regard. I don't know, maybe I'll do a follow-up video for him, but I highly doubt it because I don't like giving this monster any kind of fame or anything like that. But nevertheless, the fight is a good fight. I'll give it up. That's one to be certain of. The fight is a good fight. Do I still like him? Well, do I still hate him rather? The answer is still yes. Do I hate him more than before? Yeah, probably. You know, if not, it's still equal hate. But at the end of the day, it's still a really good fight. I've had a lot of good battles with this thing before in my lifetime, and honestly, it's still a very tough fight. Like you'll go into this fight and it has the atmosphere of it being like the climax of basically everything you were doing in your entire life. I kind of feel like Char was not really it, and I don't feel like Safi was it, or Xeno. Actually, Xeno was kind of close. It was pretty climactic, but this guy right here, he does his job good. He is a very, very upstanding monster in terms of it being quite the difficult fight, a fight that tests everything you've ever learned as of right now. So, yeah, the armor is kind of whatever. It's okay, I guess. The weapons are fantastic. The fight is difficult, kind of hard to really get the grips on. That's why I totally understand if you guys are watching guides and things like that to actually fully understand what it takes to actually get set up at least. Because the biggest problem we had initially was just setting up. Like, it was so tough to just do anything. So after trial and error, we were able to come together and figure out what it takes to actually fight him. Hopefully you guys found this video relatively informative, and if you did, please let me know. If there's anything you want me to clarify on, please do not hesitate whatsoever to let me know in the comment section. Like, yo Dak, you got this wrong, or yo Dak, can you explain this even further? I'll do my absolute best to do so, because a lot of times when I do these things, it's usually like early in the morning and I kind of forget a couple of things here and there, and I try not to. I actually have my notes right here in front of me, but if I do miss something or I mess something up, please let me know. I'll try my best to actually help you guys out in the comment section, because it is a timed event, but I want everyone to get everything they can get out of them, so that way they don't have to fight them more than they actually should. And with that being said, everyone, it's been your boy Dak908, aka the Dig Dug himself. Thanks so much for watching, and it feels good to kind of be out of retirement. I'm not gonna lie, I miss doing these exact videos. Who knows, maybe I will come out of retirement and continue doing these, but I don't know, I'll leave that up to you guys. Nevertheless, the next video will be Frostfang Barioth, and I'll get to him hopefully by this weekend. Take care.